And welcome back to another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling, a very special edition here tonight. I'm Sean Meyers, joined by co-host Justin Lowery. And Justin, as you're well aware, it is our 1-year anniversary, a big milestone for us. And first off, I want to thank you for being a large portion of those episodes as the co-host. I would say you're probably in about, 35 to 40 out of the 53 weeks that we've done so far. So appreciate that. I know it's a big commitment. And I've been hyping this for weeks. For people who watch every week, and I know there's many of them, they're probably wondering, well, it was a little different. There wasn't that intro video, right? We're going to have a lot of surprises tonight. One of the first surprises and things that I want to show that's new for our second year is a new video. So let's take a look at the new open that you will see from now on at the beginning and the end of every show of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Well, Justin, I know you're going to have to check it out post-production, if you will. I'm hoping you'll be pleased. We got some new music. We got a nice little, as opposed to just a still graphic of your head superimposed over someone else's body, and Sean Saputo still up there. Rest in peace to Sean. We got some fancy new graphics for our intro. So that is one of the things. We're also going to hear from some of our former guests that we've had throughout the past year, Bob Orquist, as well as Rennie Detour later in the show, plus a special announcement about something else that will be coming, that will be new for our second year. But Justin, we have a lot to talk to because it's not only our anniversary, but it's now less than 2 weeks out from WrestleMania. As we're doing this, I think it's about 10 days from WrestleMania. And you and I both sort of thought, well, things are set for the most part. There's not going to be anything major changes. They're just going to build to the matches that they've already announced. Well, they kind of pulled a quick one on us this past week. And normally we talk about Raw to start. I want to focus on Smackdown. It seemed like a lot happened on Smackdown. One thing I think was pretty expected with how the show concluded. Another thing early in the show really caught me off guard.
Yeah, I guess the big talk of the wrestling world right now is Charlotte beating Asuka for the SmackDown Women's title. It seems the reaction's mostly negative. There are some positive, reactions to it I see. I think it sucks for Asuka in particular. I don't think the title switch was needed, especially at this point in the build-up to the WrestleMania main event. Then again, I don't think Charlotte's really a necessity in the match, but I understand why. All in all, it feels a little forced to me, and it clearly seems to me it smells like a Vince McMahon move.
Well, you say that because they've really put this match at the forefront of WrestleMania 35. This is, the number one headliner. This has already been announced as the main event. And some years they do not announce beforehand what the main event is, but they've made sure to do this to get those headlines. It's, significant because it's the first women's main event for WrestleMania. We've seen other pay-per-views headlined by women. This was kind of the last thing to check off, I think, the last big thing. So that we knew that this was a possibility. Pretty much a full calendar year ago, they talked about this. I think it was always supposed to be Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair, at least in Vince McMahon's mind and some of the people's minds at the top. And Becky Lynch, and she's brought this up, she sort of threw a wrench in those plans. They still went with Charlotte in the match. But it seems like now they're doing everything possible to try to make this feel bigger. I don't think the title was needed to do that, however, and I think it hurts not only Asuka, but it hurts the SmackDown division in general.
Yeah, actually, I think it's kind of funny. I think they did it to try to build up this notion of the women's main event and what they're doing for women's wrestling, but in a way they actually hurt it.
I agree.
But by just making Asuka obsolete and the other women that were supposed to be in that SmackDown Women's match, all of a sudden they went from having a match to getting nothing on the card. So
yeah, they scrapped the four-way that was supposed to take place on SmackDown to determine the number one contender.
Right. So I think in a way they hurt their own product. They robbed Peter to pay Paul, to use that saying. in the end, I don't know if it really helps anything. I think it's a little bit more confusing to the casual fan that might tune in to watch it. Maybe a MMA fan of Ronda Rousey's that's going to watch, and they're going to like, well, why is there two champions in this match? Which one? What belt's on the line? Does next week on SmackDown or Raw, are we going to find out that both titles are on the
line? What's your guess at this point?
Boy, that's a good question. I don't even know if I can guess because I don't know if they know. I would assume that they're going to end up putting both titles on the line.
I would agree with that.
Theoretically, one of them can walk out with both if Charlotte or Ronda would win.
That being said, let's say Becky Lynch wins. Does she get the title of who she pins? Do they unify the titles? There's a lot of possibilities, but I think you and I are on the same page with this. Charlotte probably should not have been in this match. Had they really pulled the trigger on Ronda turning heel earlier, Charlotte becomes really unnecessary. But I think Becky, Ronda was your main event for the Raw title. It was a perfect setup for it. And then you have the rematch, Asuka, Charlotte. And they had a great match on Tuesday. There's no doubt that they, can put on a great performance. But now Asuka and the rest of that division has no purpose. You could have had two basically main event caliber women's matches for titles, and now you have one and nothing else on the other side.
Right. Yes, people were complaining about too many matches in the card, and they cut one, but they cut one of the women's matches. They're trying to build up that they're women pioneers, and then they go and kind of take the rug out from, Asuka and whoever her opponent would have been. I find it disappointing. I just don't think it needed to be done. If Becky beats Ronda and moves to Raw, then you could have had Charlotte feud with Asuka after WrestleMania, and if you want to put the belt back on Charlotte, you could have, but at least let them feud over it. It just seems a little, it's nonsense. But then again, this whole build up to this match at WrestleMania has been nonsense.
Yeah, that build, that storyline, they took something that was ready-made, they've complicated it, made it worse. Really, I think in almost anyone's estimation, you could sort of make that same argument for the Kofi Kingston, Daniel Bryan, but I'm going to take the opposite side here, Justin. You and I both spoke about how they really didn't need to stack the deck each and every week against Kofi. It was a good decision on the fly to put him into the WrestleMania match, and that was finalized this past Tuesday, but they kind of made it a little bit too ridiculous because we've seen this story before, the authority versus the face. That being said, even though it's a tired scenario, the crowd has been loving it. It's produced some great matches. And at least in the very end, at WrestleMania, we're getting the one-on-one match that we deserve, unlike with the women's where they probably did not give us the match that we really always wanted at WrestleMania.
Yeah, talk about, Kofi took the ball and ran with it. He was in that gauntlet match that he wasn't even supposed to be in with Mustafa Ali. Well, now it's just Ali. Can't call him Mustafa anymore. They dropped his first name.
That's ridiculous, by the way, because let's be honest, it's somewhat racist, I think, for why they decided to do that. They're like, oh, well, his name's Mustafa. We can't make him a face. That was really the whole basis of his character in 205 Live, is that he was changing stereotypes. But nonetheless, let's get back to Kofi. Another guy who Vince, in his storyline, is sort of, it's kind of underlying, but there's been some kind of racism with how this has been presented, right?
The New Day and some of their Twitter, videos and tweets have kind of alluded to them being held down because of that they're black. They haven't come out and said it, but they've used that undertone. I did find it weird that he finally gets his match because his partners won a gauntlet match. And that makes me think of two things are going to happen. One, Kofi loses at WrestleMania because of Big E and Xavier, or he wins the title. The next Tuesday on SmackDown, they turn on him. He got real big. They're the ones who put him over the edge. I could see a future story.
I would be okay with that second scenario. Give him that moment. Give the New Day that moment, because I know, characters in the end, but that's a real significant moment for all three if he does win the title in real life. So I would like to see that, and then you kind of switch a couple days later and start something new.
That would what I would like to see. But then what do you do with Daniel Bryan? Does he fade out of the title picture quickly, or,
right?
Do they wait another month or two before they pull that trigger on that?
Are you still really looking forward to the match, despite the fact that they've kind of gone with this, Daniel Bryan 2014, whatever year it was?
I am going to be looking forward to it because I am going to be pulling for Kofi Kingston to have his moment. So as a fan, that's something I want to see. Honestly, that's probably the biggest thing I want to see coming out of Mania. Most of the build to the matches have been lackluster to me, and the closer we've gotten to WrestleMania, the less I've been interested in it, believe it or not. 4 weeks ago...
It's supposed to be the opposite.
Right. To me, every week it gets worse. I'm still interested in the women's main event because I think they're going to go, all out.
And I think there's intrigue because we don't know what's going to happen with Ronda.
Right, and there's a little intrigue, but I expect Kofi and Bryan... I expect Kofi to put the match of his life on. This is what he's worked for 11 years, his whole life, for his whole career, and he's in there with a very talented guy. And I think Daniel Bryan wants. I feel like he's a guy backstage that would politic for him to win, like Kofi to get be put over. Like, let him have this moment. This is I expect both those guys to go out there, and Mike just had the match of the night.
And this is a true heel versus face that the entire crowd will get behind. There's not going to be people cheering Daniel Bryan. There's not going to be people booing Kofi. And that's refreshing at WrestleMania because so many times we see what the company wants us to react. It's kind of the opposite.
Right. I would hate to be the match that has to follow that. Either way, if Kofi wins, it's going to be draining. And if by chance they decide to have Bryan win, it's going to be ugly. So it'll be interesting to see where it's placed on the card, too.
So those were the big things from SmackDown. Anything else really jump out from Tuesday night? I mean, let's be honest, the gauntlet matches over the past couple of weeks have taken up half the show or more. So there's not a whole lot that they've gotten on.
Well, the gauntlet matches have been entertaining in the ring. I told you when we talked on the phone earlier, I actually tuned out until about 10 minutes until the end of the show because I knew that they were going to go all the way to the end. And I had some other things to do, so I didn't need to sit there. I think they started about 9:15. So I didn't need to sit there for 45 minutes to know that if I tune in for the last 10 minutes, I'll get to see the outcome.
Did you see the exchange with the Usos?
I did.
I thought that was actually pretty cool. And I mean, I would have maybe done it slightly different, but that was a nice moment there.
Yeah, I was actually, when they started talking, I thought one of them was going to lay down.
Yeah, I thought they were just going to walk out and take a count out.
Yeah, but, or something, or something. And actually, it actually made sense logically and storyline wise. They've been many of battles, but they have respect for one another, and also holding Kofi down. It's them, backing their brother in arms, right. I guess, or something you could say. So yeah, I had no problem with it. I actually enjoyed that. I liked it, and but yeah, I mean, basically two things happened on SmackDown: the women's match and again, the Miz and Shane McMahon had their thing. We got to see Sanity play bodyguards with But, I mean, that pretty much sums up SmackDown.
So we're going to get to Raw in just a moment. But first, I mentioned we're going to have some guest appearances on this special one-year anniversary. By the way, if you haven't noticed, this is the shirt that I wore for the inaugural episode alongside Sean Saputo. I don't think you're wearing the same attire that he wore. Although I want to say it was Bullet Club. I think he was trying to show off his unique wrestling taste. So I know you're a Bullet Club guy. But I do want to go to the first special message that we have tonight, courtesy of a KSWA legend.
Hey, Bobby O here, owner of the KSWA. 1 year anniversary of the 5-star podcast of wrestling with my friend Sean. Happy to be part of that for a couple shows last year. Always happy to talk wrestling, and in particular KSWA wrestling. Hopefully we get a chance to do that many, many, many more years, Sean. Congratulations, and stay classy, Meyers.
The one and only Bobby O. Appreciate him. He's been great the 2 times we've had him on, and as he said, hopefully we will have him on again in the future. I know he's always excited to promote the KSWA. Check that out if you get an opportunity. I went to a handful of shows over the years. Justin, you and I have attended their events many a times down in Lawrenceville. Great guy, and certainly a great wrestling fan and a fun person to talk to. Speaking of this past week, however, we talked about SmackDown. I don't think Raw was quite as significant to me. Raw's been kind of weird over the last couple weeks because it seems like one of the biggest stories that they've been building has been Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns. And I know that this is sort of maybe a patchwork match because they didn't know Roman's availability up until probably February, and then they needed someone to him to go against. But really, Raw has kind of culminated the last 3 or so weeks with Drew McIntyre looking like a real threat. Where do you think that this match ends up on the card, and is it something that you're interested in as of right now?
No, but I just don't have any interest. There's on the Raw side, it's pretty blah. I don't know if you saw, but the Raw ratings actually went down this week.
It's not a good sign.
No, SmackDown's went up, but Raw's went down 2 weeks before WrestleMania, and it dipped. That would be concerning to me. Look, I'm surprised Roman's back this early. Good for him. Great story. I don't expect this match to go 20, 25 minutes. Maybe I'm wrong. You would think it would be kept kind of short. I don't know what type of cardio shape Roman's in at this point. Roman's going to go over. I would assume, his WrestleMania moment will be beating Drew McIntyre and beating Cancer. I expect it to probably be middle of the card. It's not going to be in the first 3 or 4 matches, but definitely maybe in, 7 hours long. So maybe in the 4th hour or so, I would think.
So McIntyre's a guy that when he came back to NXT, everyone said, well, this guy's way different. He's legitimate now. He completely transformed his body, his moveset, his character. He came up on the main roster, and he was one of the best protected guys for almost a year. And they very rarely do that long term with guys they bring up. But you could tell he's a type of guy that Vince wants to really push. Then all of a sudden around December, it kind of disappeared. He lost to Dolph Ziggler. He was kind of lost in the shuffle. He was in with the awful combination of Corbin and Strowman and all these other people. Now it looks like, we need a big time opponent for Roman Reigns. Let's build him back up. I like McIntyre, but him beating Dean Ambrose a handful of times, including again on Raw, it feels really like a waste of a main event segment when they should be focusing on some other things for WrestleMania.
Yeah, if Roman's back, Roman's going to be the focal point, and no matter what feud he's doing, whether it's for the title or not for the title, is going to be prominently featured. That's just what the case is going to be. To me, they're putting themselves in a little bit of a tough booking situation. You're trying to build up Drew McIntyre, and like you said, he was very much protected. He was on the rise, and then he got kind of silly, lost some matches. So then people he kind of dropped down. Now they're trying to build him back up. Okay, they're building him back up for what? Just to lose to Roman? So what's that going to do for him? Nothing. I think he'll be right back down, and that's the problem. They don't really have too many stars because they sacrifice everybody for a certain 1 or 2 wrestlers.
And Dean Ambrose, putting a guy over in Drew McIntyre makes sense, but you have to wonder, is this really going to create a new star if McIntyre ultimately just ends up losing to Roman and doesn't really get anything? Now, I do think he benefits from getting in a marquee match at Mania at least, and there is something to be said about that. Yeah,
but you remember when Fandango fought Chris Jericho at WrestleMania, and we thought that was going to be big things for him, and led to nothing. Now, if Drew McIntyre would beat Roman at WrestleMania, it wouldn't hurt Roman. Roman's spots, is what it is. Nothing's going to hurt him.
But we know how this company typically books someone returning from injury, or in this case, even more severe.
Right, and especially their top guy. He's going to win. Every time Cena or Triple H came back, they always skyrocketed right away.
Another thing on Raw that I really want to get behind, but has been difficult to watch, has been this Kurt Angle farewell tour. The booking has been tremendous in terms of who he's facing, going out on top on Raw and SmackDown. Now, everyone hates him against Baron Corbin. I don't know if that's still going to happen or not, but they've done a great job on Raw and SmackDown, putting him against the who's who, really, for his career. And on Monday was Samoa Joe, which is interesting because if anyone thought that the brand split was, still a thing, it's not. You could just switch whenever. So they put Joe and Angle. Cool idea, but it's just Kurt Angle just doesn't have it anymore. He's not the worst guy ever, but he's such a shell of his former self, and it honestly looks like someone's going to get hurt. I was afraid he wasn't even going to make it to his WrestleMania match when I saw him and Joe, and Angle was really, really struggling. How did you kind of evaluate Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe?
Look, what you said, I did chuckle at, Samoa Joe and Angle on Raw. Like you said, brand extension, ha ha ha. I do find it interesting that they're playing like Angle's greatest hits, and like clearly that's a big TNA feud. I believe it was like 2006 when they first had their match. So I mean, it's a callback to that. Even AJ Styles on SmackDown, which that wasn't really a match.
And I think that might have been a reaction to what we saw on Raw, where Kurt just looked like he really was struggling physically.
Yeah, if you're going to advertise that, I would have liked at least you would theoretically see like 7, 8, 9 minutes, but maybe in back-to-back nights. I bet you Angle can't wrestle back-to-back nights anymore.
Right, and I guess he's not doing SmackDown next week, so his match against Mysterio and Raw will be the only one before Mania.
Yeah, and from what I've read, Angle was handpicked every single opponent on his tour here.
Except
his final match, which is Corbin. It feels like they're doing it ass backwards. You think Angle could pick his last opponent. And Baron Corbin isn't a type of wrestler that's going to get anything out of Angle. Angle will be the one to get something out of him. But it is tough watching Angle wrestle. It's tough watching him walk to the ring. Even when he stands in the ring, you can see his knees. His body's just broken down. There's no shame in that. I think he's 50 years old. Between the amateur wrestling and, what he did with that, and then going, on the years of abuse in the ring, it's taken its toll on him. He's no longer that guy, and that's okay, but it pains me to see that. It's why I don't want to see The Undertaker come back. And all these
right.
People like,
I mean, Shawn Michaels did it the right way, didn't he?
Until Saudi Arabia, yes. Go out on top. Let me remember you the way you were, and I still will. But I hate seeing somebody who was so awesome in the ring not even be half of what he used to be, honestly. He's probably like 25%.
Right.
And that one move, was it a suplex or they were going for? And Angle just couldn't get over.
Right, that's what I was saying. Like, I mean, I legitimately thought like he's going to get hurt and not even be able to finish this run.
Yeah.
Speaking of old guys who have been hurt in their career, you could say that about Triple H, and you could say that about Batista. They had a promo with Hunter in the ring on Raw, and as serious as this was to start the feud, and I think that was kind of like a shocking, like eye-opening moment when they had Batista come back at the end of Raw attacking Ric Flair. Everyone seemed to react in some way to that. It's kind of become Triple H as a face just has to come out and crack jokes. I don't know how you. I mean, he kind of. I mean, Triple H is great. He can turn it on and off very quickly from having a good time to being serious. But when the first 5 minutes of the promo is him just making insider jokes and stuff like that, it's kind of hard for me to really buy this as a blood feud. Now the stipulation is Triple H. It's his last match if he loses. Batista, I think, has already said it's his last match. I mean, is this? I mean, I'm thinking of like Goldberg and Brock Lesnar. Where, like, it won't be quite that bad, but it's like two guys that you potentially might not ever see wrestling again, but it doesn't feel like it's a real special match in that same breath.
Because I don't feel like it's special. I expect Triple H to go over, especially when he's saying this is my last match. Though we all know that means nothing in wrestling.
Right.
But I think this is Batista just a one-off thing, and Triple H, he's going to go over. He's going over. I mean, I'll watch it. How good can Batista be? When was his last match? It's been what, 5 years?
Yeah, it's been a while. So he did the WrestleMania in New Orleans, WrestleMania 30 that Daniel Bryan won, which is ironic because they're doing that same storyline now. And then he wrestled for about 2 months afterwards. And I think that June is when he kind of cut out, and that's when Seth Rollins turned.
Right.
So it's been a long time, and a lot of it has come full circle if you think about the different pieces. But he's 52, right? I mean, if not, he's darn close.
Right, because he was pretty old when he started his main event. He was older than most. And remember, Triple H is also coming off a torn pec, which he's a little early on the comeback.
Yeah, that was like November, or like early November.
Right. and especially at his age, because I thought he would not be able to wrestle WrestleMania when he tore his pec in November, especially at his age. I wonder what type of shape he's going to be in. And I want to put past Vince and company and Triple H to say, we need to get me in a match because the card's lacking. I mean, to me, the card's not very special.
Well, we know WrestleMania is about the part-timers, and there's good and bad to that. Casual fans, it's probably good. The people that watch every week, and the wrestlers who are there every week who kind of get pushed down in the card. But you have to do something to separate WrestleMania from the other events. All I keep thinking in my head, though, is, will this kind of be like the Triple H Sting match, which is just super overbooked, and two guys that really couldn't get it done just one-on-one in the ring, so they had to do a lot of other creative stuff to make it.
I would like to think Batista's in better shape than Sting was at that point in his career. I mean, Batista still looks like to be in great physical shape. Working out, he does the movie roles. So that seems to be good. I mean, what's his timing going to be like in the ring? I would assume that him and Triple H will work some things out beforehand, so that maybe work on some spots so it's not just like on the fly, especially for somebody who hasn't wrestled in almost 5 years. We'll see how the crowd reacts. I don't think it's going to be like a super hot crowd with the match, because there's not a lot of story behind it. I get, okay, I beat up Ric Flair to get your attention, blah, 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 blah.
Right. Now we're going back to Evolution, and like you and I can appreciate that, but can the vast majority of the fans?
Can a 10-year-old, 12-year-old? No. Not at all.
Even a 15-year-old, I mean, we're talking like over 10 years that they're going back with this feud, and recently there hasn't been that much that they've talked about.
No, most people I know Batista now as, a guardian of the galaxy, not a wrestler. And, they just see Drax now wrestling Triple H. Oh, that's cool.
I got some other stuff that I want to get to as far as Rennie Detour and a new addition to the show, but is there anything else this week, whether it be main roster, anything in NXT, or outside of WWE that you thought was really noteworthy?
No, not really. I just the fact that it looks like we're getting 7 hours of WrestleMania. I saw the pre-shows officially starting at 5 to 7.
Well, it's better than 4, I guess, right?
Right, and I would assume that the main show's from 7 to midnight, which is going to suck for me because I get up early for work. But I'm going to stay up to, definitely watch. Like, if Lesnar and Rollins was going on last, there is a chance I would go to bed and just catch that match the following day. But because it is the women's match, I will stay up for it. So
you want to be part of history, Justin.
I do expect them to go all out. So, if anything, I think it should be entertaining.
NXT will have a new champion crowned 2 days before, and I believe you know this better than I. I'm still trying my best to catch up before I go to the show, but it's going to be Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano.
Yes.
That could be terrific, and we know, if nothing else, even if there's some replacements and whatnot, NXT in-ring really delivers. So that should really be a highlight, and I kind of like the idea that it's going to be on Friday, and you give that day off to kind of catch your breath before Mania.
No, I agree, especially for the people that are going to both shows like yourself. You will be in attendance for both, and hopefully get some good videos to share on the podcast here. Maybe snag an interview. See what you can do. That's
a goal. So that should be a pretty fun weekend. And again, I will be there. I'll try to maybe get some creative content from up there. Well, let's hear from another former co-host and guest on the show. He is a former wrestling columnist in the Pittsburgh area. Let's hear from Rennie Detour.
Hey, this is Rennie Detour wishing the 5-Star Wrestling Podcast a happy 1-year anniversary. Certainly appreciated my time being part of the show and look forward to year number 2, giving my insight, being part of the podcast. Congratulations.
All right, thanks once again to Rennie as well as Bobby O. We'll likely have them back once again in 2019 as we start year number 2. And Justin, I also had teased a new edition that we'll be having. Not sure exactly when or how often, but we will be doing live podcasts in the future. So we'll do that probably both, certainly live streaming on YouTube, and then maybe get that on Twitter as well. So if all goes according to plan, we will have a live chat there. Anyone that's watching could, type their questions or comments or anything like that. Make it a little more interactive. And then, of course, we'll still archive it, have it up for you to watch later. But we'll try to interact a little bit better with the fans with some live streaming on YouTube and potentially Twitter as well. You were supposed to bring the cake, right? Do you have that?
And the girl who was going to jump out couldn't make it tonight. She had a previous engagement.
Mae Young.
Yeah. It was her son Hans. It was his birthday.
Ah, okay. That's off the cuff humor right there. We did not rehearse that. Once again, Justin, I thank you and I thank everyone who's watched. And I know we're hoping to get more viewers in year number 2, but there are a lot of people who do watch at least somewhat regularly. We appreciate all of them each and every week. And again, we will be back next week, and it'll be a very big show, Justin, because it will be our WrestleMania preview show next week before I set sail for Brooklyn as well as MetLife Stadium. That's going to do it for our 1-year anniversary show of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. For my co-host, Justin Lowery, this is Sean Meyers signing off. Check us out on Twitter, 5-Star Pod Wrestle. You can go back, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and go back and watch every video over the past year as we now move to year number 2. We'll catch you again next week right here on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.